After law school, I returned to Chicago where Bill and Bernadine were employed in the halls of academia. I began a 20-year partnership with Acorn when I took a job as director of Project Vote, their voter mobilization arm.
Wake it up, 'cause I'm here to tell you about a simple little concept that I shouldn't have to tell you. It's all about voting and the juice it can bring, so get up and get out, 'cause it's a power thing.
I used Black Panther-style posters with the word power and a big X for Malcolm X. I registered 150,000 blacks. I sure wasn't trying to register white folks. Though Project Vote was funded by taxpayers as nonpartisan, it was clear 95% would vote Democrat.
They registered 150,000 voters to get Bill Clinton and Carol Moseley Braun elected.
Just 40% of the registrations were legitimate. I think every cemetery in town voted. We played by our own rules. According to Alinsky, since elections were already a fraud, an instrument of the rich, the ends justified the means. My success with Project Vote earned me the job of training director for Acorn's front groups. For 10 years, I taught Saul Alinsky and class consciousness in Chicago, just like my real father. I was a natural, a master of agitation. I could engage a room full of recruits in rapid-fire socialist dialogue and fire them up.
Are you fired up? Ready to go?
Next, Bill's dad secured a job for me at the Davis Minor Law Firm, which represented the Woods Fund. On behalf of Acorn, I sued the state of Illinois to enforce the motor voter law. This eliminated the requirement for identification and made it easy to register non-existent voters, like Mickey Mouse and Donald Duck, even Jive Turkey. Later, 8 of the 19 9/11 hijackers were registered under motor voter.
Change starts when you help a family buy their first home and then help that family stay in that first home.
I also helped Acorn lay the foundation for the subprime mortgage debacle. That's right, I was in on it, on the ground floor.
There's a continuity between the work that I did with Project Vote, the work that I did as an organizer that originally brought me to Chicago, and the work that I'm doing now as an attorney.
We sued Citibank for racial discrimination, forcing them to lower their lending standards. Acorn then found an open door to the White House through HUD Secretary Henry Cisneros, and President Clinton required Fannie and Freddie to approve risky subprime mortgages to unqualified borrowers. The rest is history. Charitable foundation work was a major part of my pre-political career, and Bill Ayers was my partner and close ally. In 1993, Bill appointed me director of the Woods Fund, and in 1995, chairman of the Annenberg Challenge that he co-founded. The money was supposed to be for education. Instead, we funneled it to our radical allies. Next, Vernon Jarrett, a colleague of my real father from the Chicago Star, helped me place Michelle in the mayor's office, where his daughter-in-law, Valerie Jarrett, was working for Mayor Richard Daley. Soon enough, Michelle and Valerie were running an Acorn front group, Public Allies.
Pregnant with the possibility of tremendous change. We have to go to the root of the problem.
After attending Louis Farrakhan's Million Man March, the book deal I was given as first black president of the Harvard Law Review was canceled. I knew I had a problem. I couldn't write. Even though I was president of a legal journal, I had never published a single article. But Bill said an autobiography would help position me for a run at mayor. So Thomas Ayer secured a new publisher and a $40,000 advance. I gave the money to Bill, along with piles of notes, and he wrote my autobiography. It made sense. Bill had known me since I was 21, had helped me at every step. He knew what to exaggerate, misdirect, or exclude.
I've written 7 books. I've edited another 13.
Right, and also, just you mentioned about the Pentagon and Tom.
I wrote it.
What's that?
I wrote that page.
Yeah, we know. You wrote that?
His father was from Kenya, and his mother was out of Kansas to Hawaii. My guest is Barack Obama. Dreams from my father.
Though I'd never experienced racism in my childhood, Bill invented a string of racial incidents. He said Southside blacks would relate to victimization. Bill bragged, "When I'm done, you'll be just another brother from the hood."
I identify with these young men because they don't have fathers either.
He even changed my teenage identity crisis over my Kenyan name to a crisis of black and white.
My identity was wrapped up with sort of images of freedom riders in the South.
Nor was I ever involved in drugs. But Bill said a history of drug abuse would build street credibility with blacks. So I became the first person in the history of American politics to exaggerate drug use for political gain. Finally, Bill named the book Dreams from My Father and spent 130 pages on my roots trip to Kenya to further obscure my real father's identity. In turn, I endorsed Bill's book, Blaming American Society for Criminal Behavior. In Marxist theory, law is an instrument of the rich to oppress the poor. So breaking the law is an act
We will escalate our attack.
of resistance.
The revolutionary movement begin to fight.
State Senator Alice Palmer, an avowed communist, ran for U.S. Congress and handpicked me for her state Senate seat. Bill and Bernadine launched my political career with a coming out party at their house. However, Alice lost in the primary and ran for her old seat again. I knew from Project Vote that most voter registrations on the South Side were fraudulent. So I challenged the signatures, and Alice was disqualified. Though I ran as a Democrat, I was a member of Acorn's Socialist Party, the new party, and they were thrilled with my victory.
Our firm was not the attorneys primarily for Tony Rezko, but were attorneys for the non-for-profit group.
To comprehend my relationship with Tony Rezko, you need to understand what we call the Chicago way. It involves access to power, government jobs, and federal money. Politicians reward law firms and real estate developers with contracts. In return, they pay for the politicians' re-election campaigns. In other words, the C in Chicago stands for corruption. At Davis Minor, I represented Syrian-born Tony Rezko, a major client.
Mr. Rezko, he's somebody who raised money for my campaign during the course of 10 years. My 2 state Senate races, a congressional race as well as a United States Senate race.
Tony Rezko bankrolled my political campaigns and helped me buy a 6,000 square foot Georgian mansion in Hyde Park.
And what is true is that I also purchased a piece of land from him. Everything was above board, and there's been no allegations that there wasn't.
In return, I helped Rezko get a $100 million grant for his redevelopment schemes. Rezko simply kept the money and abandoned the low-income properties. That's right, Tony funded my campaigns and subsidized my house, and I lobbied the state to get taxpayer money for Tony. That's the Chicago way. My record in the state Senate mostly involved social welfare legislation and race-based measures. I put Reverend Wright on my advisory committee, and I worked closely with Acorn's network of front groups, as well as Farrakhan's Nation of Islam. I voted present 129 times to avoid political liability. My friends in the state Senate were white liberals. We played golf and poker. State Senator Don Trotter called me a white man in blackface.